Hello, I'm Jewel, and welcome to my channel, Just Being Jewel, where I, Jewel, just being me, talk about book things. And today, I wanted to do the mid-year freakout tag. So, I actually have only read, as of right now, I'm filming this like mid-June, so there might be like 1 or 2 more books added to this total number, but not a lot. 17 books so far, so it's not a lot, but I'm a firm believer in it's not your book count that makes you a reader, it is your love of books, and I love books, so here I am doing the mid-year freakout tag. So let's just dive right into it. Question 1. Best book you've read so far in 2022? Once and Future Witches by Alex Harrow. I actually have that right here. Once and Future Witches by Alex Harrow is probably I won't say it's the best book, because I have some things about it that I am a little picky about. I think that some of the writing is repetitive and it tells instead of shows, and I think that there are some flaws, but it was my favorite book so far of 2022. It's, if I had to try and sum it up in one sentence, witches fighting for women's suffrage that turns into fighting for all women's rights, and sisters always argue. So, best book so far of 2022 for me. Best sequel I've read so far in 2022. I have not read a lot of sequels. There's not a lot of competition here. But if I had to pick one of the 3 sequels that I've read so far this year, Rule of Wolves, Leigh Bardugo. It's the sequel in the duology that is based off of characters from the Grishaverse, from both Shadow and Bone trilogy and Six of Crows duology. Then, takes place after both of those, with characters from both of them. It's a very big book. I loved it. I enjoyed it. And it was my favorite sequel. New release you haven't read yet but want to. Got the perfect book for this. Okay, for me, that's going to be Book of Night by Holly Black. I feel like in the last several videos I've made, I talk about how much I want to read this book. I don't know why I haven't read it yet, but I want to read it really badly, and it came out in May, so I should just read it. Next one. Most anticipated release for the second half of the year. Ooh, Grey Warren by Maggie Stiefvater. The 3rd book in the Dreamer trilogy. Here's the 2nd one, actually. It happened to be in this general vicinity with the stack of books that I have going on. This mess of books I have going on. Yes, I haven't even actually read Mr. Impossible yet. I'm planning to hopefully read it a little closer to when Grey Warren comes out, so it's a little fresher in my mind. But Call Down the Hawk was really good, and I liked Call Down the Hawk, and I felt like it was really setting the stage for the future of these characters in the story. So Grey Warren actually comes out on my birthday, so that might be another reason why it's a very anticipated release for me. Biggest disappointment. That is the only book that I have rated of 1 star so far in 2022, and that would be Water for Elephants by Sarah Gruen. I hated this book. I don't know why. I know why I finished it, because I listened to it on audiobook on my drive down to Florida, which was a 16-hour drive, so I had to fill it with something, and this audiobook was the first audiobook that came in through the library. So I listened to it in the entire drive down, and I hated this book so much. I don't know why it's a major motion picture, because it was a horrible story. And the reason it's actually extra disappointing is because I thought it had an awesome premise. The premise is an Ivy League veterinarian falls on hard times and happens to join a traveling circus during Great Depression, Prohibition era times, and that setup in and of itself has so much potential to do so many cool things, but instead all the characters felt really flat. They felt like they had just no depth or dimension to them, and one of the other big things that I really hated about this book was just gratuitous amounts of animal abuse for no well, it is for a reason, but the way that the character, the main character, whose like perspective this is from, is reacting to it, who's a vet, it's almost as if he glosses over it, and it made me sick. I was like feeling disgusted listening to it, and a little bit nauseous, and there was no, like, if there was a point to it, then yes, but it felt like the main character just described these things that was happening, and he himself didn't have any feelings about it. Like, it didn't talk about him feeling nauseous or him feeling disgusted. It's just this stuff happened, and I was sickened by it. Another big thing that I hated was pointless mentions of just things of sexual nature and like genitalia, and it was not, like, don't get me wrong, I love some smut, but this didn't have any point to the story. Like, it was just there. And then the final nail in the coffin for me was that they used mental illness as a way to say why the bad guy was bad and why he did what he did. And I think that's a not great depiction of mental illness. Like, yes, that can happen. Like, people who are mentally ill can do bad things, but using it as the excuse for why this character does all the bad things and not showing it in any other light, I felt like I hated this book. And the only reason I'm keeping it at this point is to put it on my like already read this year shelf, and at the end of 2022 it's going in the donation bin. I'm done. I never want to see that book again. I don't even want to see the movie. I want nothing to do with it. So that was the biggest disappointment. Okay, the next one is the biggest surprise, and the biggest surprise for me was actually Jim Butcher's Summer Nights. And that's because I had really, really low expectations for this. I myself am not a huge Jim Butcher fan. I read the first 3 Jim Butcher books, Dresden File books, because my partner is a huge fan of the Dresden Files. A lot of the times we like a lot of the same stuff. So I was like, yeah, I should like this, right? Like, it's supposed to have like vampires and fae and Celia and Sealy Quartz, and like that's very much my thing. I'm all about that kind of stuff. And the first 3 books I was not into. I was like, this is very mediocre to me. This is, the main character's horny and frustrated, and that's like all he can talk about, and he's very like self-sacrificing and self-deprecating, and like just I couldn't handle it. But this book, I was like, I'm gonna keep trying, because everyone says after the 3rd book it gets better, right? It gets better after the 3rd book. So I was like, this is it. It's gonna get better after this book, right? And it did. I literally, the first like 3 chapters of this book were better than the first 3 books all put together. So I was surprised actually at how much I enjoyed this one. I think this is the reason I was into this one so much, is because it actually starts to get in more into like the fae courts, and the political machinations and things like that start to be more prominent. And that might have been why I liked it a lot more. But this one took me by surprise. I went into it not expecting to like it, and expecting it to be like the first 3 books, and I actually liked it. So, favorite new author, debut, or new to you? So I haven't read a ton of new authors actually this year. A lot of them are repeats for me. But one author that is new for me was Kim Harrison, and she is the author of the Hollows series. And by no means is she about to be like a new, like, absolute favorite author or anything, but I actually really kind of enjoyed the Hollows series so far, what I have read. I've only read 2 of them, but it feels like it's one of those that will kind of become like a staple, because I think she's even still putting out new books. So I think every, few months, or like maybe twice a year, I'll be picking up one of those books, and the books are very episodic. They each have their own little overarching plot, their own plot. So I feel like I can pick them up, enjoy them, and not touch that series for a while, pick it up again, and still be okay. So I think she's going to become a regular in my repertoire. Newest fictional crush. So I haven't read that many books that I was like, ooh, this person is swoon worthy. But if I had to, I know. So if I had to say who I have a new fictional crush on, it's Zoya. I've got a thing for strong women, and it's Zoya. Zoya Yazielensky she's a badass. So that would be my fictional crush. Newest favorite character. So I just literally talked about this book a moment ago, but Summer Night, Mab, the Winter Court. This is her first time she's been introduced, and she fucking blows it out of the water. Just this, and it's not that she's my favorite character because she's a good character. In fact, she's my favorite character because she's a strong character. She has her own wants and desires and the power to get them, and she's tricksy, and she'll play with you and she'll mess with you, and I'm here for it. I want that kind of tension in my books. So yes, Mab, Winter Queen. I think you're a badass. Book that made you cry. So I don't think any of these stand out as like, oh, I was sobbing when I read this book. But I will say Rule of Wolves has a character death in it that is very unexpected, and I don't want to spoiler anything, but there's a moment when, so this character has a hard time communicating, so he takes a lot of notes. Oh, it still feels a little spoilery. If you're worried about it being spoilery, I'm going to put my hand down when I'm done talking about it. But there's a character who takes a lot of notes because he's bad at communicating, he's bad at remembering things in the moment. And he takes all these notes about the person that he loves. And after he passes, they find that notebook. And it got me. It got me because that was it. That was my moment of, I need a couple tears out. Need to get it out of my system. Okay, done with spoilers. So, book that made you happy. I don't know if happy is the word, but after I read this book, I did get like that giddy feeling of like, I'm on top of the world because this book was just so not what I was expecting, and it all happened so quick and everything got real intense, and that would be Clariel. The last half of Clariel, I just blew through it because I was like so wide-eyed and like, oh my gosh, I can't believe what's happening. And for those who have not read the Porson series, I once again do not want to spoil anything, but this book is about a character that is in one of the first 3 books, and you don't realize it until towards the very end, and you're like, oh shit, that's what's happening. It's so good. So I guess it made me happy in the sense that I was like, when I put those pieces together, I was like, revelation moment. Most beautiful book you've bought so far this year. I have been really good about not buying too many books this year, but I will say I impulse bought a box set of Dune. Yeah, I impulse bought this Dune box set, and I think it's beautiful. I love the colors. I love how bright they are. I think this is my favorite book. This counts as one, right? That I bought this year. Is this beautiful box set. What books do you need to read by the end of this year? That's an evil question. There's too many books that I need to read. My physical TBR is overflowing. I should do video of my physical TBR because it's a little bit insane. I want to finish some series. That's big for me, is how many series. I keep starting them, so I need to work on finishing them. So the Porson series, the Dreamer trilogy would be nice to finish since the final book is coming out this year. The Hollows series that I was just talking about. Vampire Chronicles. I've been literally reading those since I was a teenager and I'm only on book 5. Dresden Files. I'm on book 4 now, and there's a lot of books of the Dresden Files that I haven't read. So there's just a lot of series that I'm in the middle of that I should probably finish up. That was my mid-year book freakout tag. Thank you for watching. If you made it this far, put a dragon emoji in the comments. And until next time.